This video is documenting the process of my second guitar build, the design on screen there that I drew. It's inspired by the Abasi EMI design. Those are some templates I got laser cut and CNC routed at a local CNC company near me. The laser cutting wasn't quite perfect, but I'll talk about that in a second. This is me just taping the template to the neck blank, which was already pre-CNC cut, which saved a lot of labor for me. So in this, I'm using a nail to locate the locating pins in the neck that will secure the fretboard to the neck. I couldn't think of any other way of doing this. Is at the moment the best way I've found to locate the fretboard in the correct place because it's pre-slotted. I needed the slot where the nut is to be in the perfect position, and I needed the fretboard to be perfectly straight, which is always terrifying because it's very much it's a guessing game. Once I've got those locating pins in and I've got the glue on both surfaces and I clamp the fretboard to the neck, there's nothing, stopping those locating pins from, changing angle slightly or, just some tiny little error from happening. And I think when I actually tried to use the locating pins, one of them didn't actually go in properly, which was terrifying, but luckily it stayed straight. Those are the holes made by the rivet that I was hammering in before to locate the locating pins.
Something I'm noticing is this fretboard, pre-slotted fretboard, was slotted slightly out. So if we line this up here, that's there, and then we go down this end. Yeah, it should be 475 mil, but it's actually 476 millimeters to the bridge side of the fret slot. So it's 1 millimeter out.
Also I've realized is my template did get laser cut correctly. So where is it? This nut slot on the bridge side, should be 484.381 millimeters, which is hard to see here. It's exact. So that's correct, but something I'm realizing now is that laser cutting isn't as exact as I thought it was. So all of these slots here are slightly, from top to bottom, it's moving slightly left to right, meaning the acrylic plastic might have shifted with the heat of the laser cutter, maybe, or the laser cutter is cutting at a slight angle, I'm not sure, but it's not quite exact. So I think I'm gonna have to just deal with it, plot those indexing holes in the fretboard and hope that it lines up with the neck where it should. And I can always relocate the bridge, I guess. Anyway, I'll give it a go. So it's lining up there, lining up.
Next time I think I'll go for a slightly thinner bit of acrylic to stop that drift from left to right, moving top to bottom there. But I do think there was a slight issue with either my template or the scaling of the template that got sent to the laser cutting place. Either my mistake or theirs, I don't know. But I do think there was a scaling issue that I'll have to look into for the next one. This is me drilling the holes for the indexing pins in the fretboard itself. So there'll be a little toothpick that goes through these holes here and into the holes that were hammered into the neck using the rivets. And I've just got a bit of tape on the top of that drill to stop it from going too far. It's just showing the hole there. And yeah, toothpicks seem to work quite well. They're a lot better option than a metal nail for me, because last time I used a metal nail and it stopped a fret from being seated correctly because I couldn't actually hammer it in all the way. Oh yeah, I had to rat out a slightly wider section in the truss rod route with the plunge router freehand because I forgot to accommodate for that in the dimension drawing. Ah yes, that was just slightly too deep of a hole for the truss rod. Either an error by the CNC company or an error in measurement by the supplier of the truss rod, but I just fixed it with tape. I just loaded it up with tape and then plugged the end there with a little bit of spare timber. I love this song. In this I'm putting in the indexing holes for the neck screws using that rivet. Same process as the locating pins for the fretboard. Just looking from above to make sure I get it right in the middle of that hole, because the hole itself in diameter is probably about 1 millimeter larger than the rivet. So there is a little bit of wriggle room, a little bit of room for error. I'm using the drill press to try and drill those screw holes, pilot holes for the neck screws. Just needed a bit of timber to set it up a bit taller. And when I switched it on, it wasn't working.
Good stuff.
One of many minor setbacks. But I've got a little hand drill press thing that works. It's not a perfectly straight hole, but it's better than freehand for me. I'm not very coordinated sometimes. Luckily, it all went to plan. Fit like a glove. It went a lot better than the last one did.
I'm going to use the pilot holes that I drilled in the neck to act as a drill press, because it's broken, to drill straight holes into the body in the heel joint with a hand drill.
Yeah, worked really well. And then I used epoxy to glue in those reinforcement rods. Worked pretty well. Didn't make too much mess. My dad had to help me because I'm hopeless. And I'm using an old Japanese leveling plane to just take off the excess of the fretboard. Probably the most satisfying part of the job. If you can, try and avoid using machinery that'll turn rosewood into really fine sawdust, because it stings your nostrils, I've found. So I try and avoid that as much as I can. Hence the old school hand plane. So when the CNC company did the holes for the tuners, they didn't go the whole way through because it would have wrecked their CNC bed. So I just drilled the rest of the way through with a 10mm drill bit and filed out any mess that I made with it. I went for a much smaller drill bit and then had to file out the excess because I was worried I'd crack the timber or something. I'm clumsy. So that took longer than it should have, but at least I didn't crack anything. And then, yeah, I clamped the neck, fretboard to the neck. Luckily, the fretboard didn't slide around, but yeah, you can see those little indexing pins, toothpicks, in the fretboard there. Here I'm doing my least favourite part of the job, which is sanding, and I'm sanding the fretboard radius. I have considered building a radiusing jig for my router, but I haven't gotten around to doing it. I've just been sanding it by hand. And, frets. I'm using super glue to keep the frets seated properly, and I'm using the broken drill press to seat them. Because last time I got told by a luthier near me that I didn't seat the frets properly. So, going for the super glue approach, and I really made a mess with the super glue. Like, I'll show it in a minute, but I'm not really going for aesthetics with this. I just want to build a guitar for a purpose, ergonomics, and to test out some theories. Yeah, I made a real mess with that super glue. Stainless steel frets too, my favourite. I hate nickel frets. I hate the feel of them. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. Stainless steel, just, if you haven't played with stainless steel frets, it feels like you're playing on glass frets or something. This fret crowning tool here I got saved so much time, and I was actually able to crown the frets, and it helps with rounding off the fret ends as well. But you got to be careful with it still. If you're not careful, you can actually flatten out the top of the fret rather than crowning it or sharpening it, which is something I had to learn the hard way. But it saved hours, and it actually did a really good job. So I 100% recommend getting a diamond encrusted fret crowning file if you're going to be using stainless steel frets. Especially if you're an amateur like me, who's very much just figuring this out as they go. This is for the yeah, I made a mistake. This is to do the ferrules for the neck screws. Then routing out the electronics cavity, which I almost messed up, but luckily the template was helping. This build I tried to avoid using the plunge router as much as I could, because after using it my hands tingle a lot. Yeah, the tuners went in perfectly. That was just me locating the bridge and getting the neck properly fitted. And I did a terrible job of the inlays on the side dots, sorry. I went for the same approach as last time. Most of them went in fine, but as I got further up higher on the neck, I drilled the holes too deep because I was moving too quickly. But I don't really care. I can still see what fret each of the markers is on, so close up of my arm. Just went with PVA glue again. So I'd put the glue in, put the dot in over the top of it, which were pre-laser cut from making the templates, and then I'd file them down with a mini jewelry file. This is just routing the pickup route. I was planning on doing a double humbucker build, but I only have one humbucker left at the moment, so I thought I'd just make use of that and not bother buying another one in these early builds just yet. Yeah, that's what it looks like. I drew the contours on and bevels on with pencil. Tried to stick with the drawing that I did at the start, which was like a Fibonacci sequence inspired design. This is creating a little jig to drill the string through holes. You'll see it in a second. I accidentally routed the pickup route too deep, so I had to cut out a perfectly sized bit of acrylic plastic that would fit into the pickup route. But the only issue was my template that I made has sharp pointy edges on all of, oh, not sharp, but the radius of the curves in all the corners of that pickup route was much smaller than the radius that is on it right now, because my router bit is quite a large radius. So yeah, I had to kind of do it by hand, which took a fair while. And then even when I got it in there, it was a really tight fit, so I just like hammered it in with some PVA glue on the bottom, and now it will not come out. So hopefully I'm able to properly mount a pickup in there at some point. I'll find out. But it's at the right height now, at least. The pickup sits at the correct height for the strings. Because before it was actually sitting below the top of the body, which was a problem, obviously. Here I was testing the balance of the body. I needed to make sure it was going to fall backwards to my right to account for any neck dive, and it seemed to lean that way. I'm not sure yet. I haven't actually put the neck on and tested for balance. I was just filing everything by hand with the contours as well to make sure that the body fitted comfortably on my lap. So the arm bevel and the neck carve and everything. So then after this I used a wood preserver. I got recommended by a local finishing place near me. They recommended I use epoxy, a pour-on epoxy resin, and then, but before that I had to put this wood preserver in that supposedly stops timber, or somewhat prevents timber from shifting due to humidity, and it's a very humid area that I live in. So I'm hoping this wood preserver helps. It actually made the timber look really good, and I got worried because when I sanded it all off, which you're supposed to do, it took away a lot of that deep color. So I'm hoping when I put the resin back on, it goes back to this really nice dark tint, and supposedly it will. This stuff here, this wood preserver, is quite a lot like Z-epoxy, which I used in the last build, only this one's compatible with epoxy and it's not water-based. And it feels pretty much exactly the same as Z-epoxy, but it feels a little bit harder and it's quite rough to the touch. Just then I was scraping my finger on it to show you, but yeah, it's quite rough to the touch. It's not something you can really use as a finish. Yeah, there it is there. Not ideal. Anyway, so that's where it's at now. It's got the wood preserver on it. I've sanded it back. Now I just got to pour the resin on and hopefully do a good enough job to get it sitting level, because it's a self-leveling resin. Once I put that resin on, then I can pretty much just install all the hardware and get it set up. Hopefully it all fits together properly. If you got any questions, as usual, put them in the comments and I'll have a chat. Been enjoying having the chat with everyone, commenting on the other stuff I've posted about this ergonomics related research and hobby obsession of mine. So thanks for having a chat and watching along.